In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to add realistic logos to your images in Photoshop. Now, you could add a logo to over the top of the image, but what I'm suggesting is that you make the logo look like it's part of the image. Like you can see here, the logos look like they were always there. Now, this is something that I thought would make a great way to jazz up your senior portraits or corporate shots so that it looks like that you could have the school logo in the background, or you could add a logo to the clothing celebrating the graduates of the end of the year, or you could use it for corporate clients. Okay, to place a logo on the back wall or on the ground, this is what you do. I've got my file opened in Photoshop. This is the latest version of Photoshop, Photoshop 2021. So first off, I need to open up the logo that I'm going to place. And so this could be a school logo, or it could be your actual photography logo, or the company that you're working for is logo. So whatever, this is the technique that I use for doing this, and this is really simple. So if you're a beginner, this is what I suggest you do. So you go to File, Place Embedded. And the reason I choose Place Embedded rather than dragging and dropping or copying and pasting is when I select Place Embedded, it's going to open the object, the file, as a smart object, which means I can then edit that non-destructively, which means I can go back and adjust any of the adjustments that I've made to that layer. I'll show you what I mean. So File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to open up where I have my logos placed. So I've got a number of these, are just stock logos. So obviously you could have one from the school or your own logo or the company logo. So I'm going to go with this one here and hit place. So you can see that that's now in place, but it's not actually in perspective anywhere. So I'll do the easy one first. So what I want to do is place this on the back wall. So first of all, I'm going to hit OK to confirm place. And you can see that little icon in the corner there. That tells me that now this is a smart object. So whatever I do to this, I can blur it, I can add noise, add texture, but anything I do to this layer, I can then go back at any time and edit, which is really handy because you might have a stock file that you've done for someone and then they decide, oh, can we change that logo to something else? You can easily swap it out. So it's a really handy way to do things. All right, so now that I've got my logo placed and I want to put it on the back wall, I'm going to select the Move tool, and I've got these little handles on each corner. And working in the latest version of Photoshop, all I need to do is hover my mouse over one of these little handles, and to resize the image in proportion so that it doesn't go all wonky or change it, all I need to do is I'm dragging my mouse up and down and that will change it. So that's a really quick way to place that image and resize it. So I'm just going to place it in an area that it looks fairly realistic. So I'm going to put it on the back wall here. All right, so it's placed there. So hit OK, and there it is. And it looks fake. And for a start, you can see that I've got sunlight on the wall. The wall is also faded and grungy. So this, as it stands, it's shiny and brand new, too sharp. It's not it's not at all affected by the light. So what I want to do first up is change the blending mode of the layer so that it looks more realistic as it is. All right, so in order to do that, I'm going to select the layer and I'm going to change my blending mode from normal to overlay, or you can always try soft light. Any of these two blending modes, have a look what happens. I think soft light looks a bit better. It's just a matter of, it'll depend on the logo and the background that you're using, but one of these two will work. I really like how soft light looks, and have a look what's happened. Now it's blended the pixels a lot better and sort of merged that image with the background. I start to see the sunlight, where there's sunlight on the wall, it's also affecting the background here. And so already it's starting to look more realistic, but we can take this a step further. So once again, what I'm going to do is change my blend mode of the actual layer. So click on the layer, and we're going to right click, blending options. All right, now when you come up with a little dialog box here, and there are these two sliders here, so we've got the underlying layer and this layer. What I'm going to do is blend it with the underlying layer. So I'll show you, just bring it across here so you can see what's happening here, and I'll just zoom in a little bit. If I take this slider here and move it across to the left, have a look what happens. It's sort of blending in, but it's quite chunky. So what I want to do is blend it so that it's looks a lot more natural, and there will be areas that we're not going to see because I want to give it that sort of aged and textured look. But when I blend the slider like this, it's quite clunky, and that looks a little bit extreme. Okay, so what I want to do is feather that, and I can do that by holding down the Option key and then clicking on that little slider, and it now splits. And now I can transition a lot more softly. See how that looks a lot smoother now? And so what I'm doing is just making it look a little bit aged in the highlights area. So just sort of play around with that. Obviously, there is no set formula. It's going to depend on your image and the logo, but already that's starting to look really good. And I can do the same with the shadow side. So again, I'm holding down the Option key on a Mac, Alt on a Windows, click, and that will split that little slider. And I'm going to do the same. Have a look how the texture, I'm going to go all the way to the right, and you can see how a lot of that texture is coming through, and that's already starting to look a lot more realistic there. Okay, something about that, and that's now given it sort of a really aged look there on the background, and it kind of looks like it belongs. But we can do a little bit more to this now. So what I want to do now is match the sort of grungy, desaturated look that I've got of my overall image here. So I'm going to add a new hue saturation adjustment layer. I'm going to go back to my layers. Now, if I adjust the hue saturation, you can see that it'll do it. It'll affect both layers. I don't want that. So to just influence the layer directly underneath, what I'm going to do is clip this hue saturation adjustment layer to my logo layer, and so that it'll only influence that layer. And to do that, what you're going to do is hover your mouse between the two layers and just press the Option key on a Mac, Alt on a Windows, and you can see you've got that little square with the arrow pointing down. That's now clipping that adjustment layer to this logo layer. So if I come back in now and I adjust the saturation here, it's just affecting that logo layer. So what I want to do is just drop the saturation a little bit so that looks a little bit old and desaturated. All right. And finally, what I wanted to do is give it that sort of peeling paint look. So what I'm going to do is add a mask to this area, and I'm going to get a brush and I'm going to select a grunge brush to do this. So I'm going to just search in the new version of Photoshop. You've got an option to search for your different brushes, and this is one that I've downloaded. So I'm going to select this grunge and just test it out here. All right, so that's taken out a fair amount of the image. So I'm just going to show you what that brush looks like. So here it is here. You can see the shape, all right? And I've just hit my logo there, and you can see that it's taking out like little grungy areas, all right? But at the moment, the brush is horizontal, right? So what I want to do is I want to change it so that I can line the edge of my brush up with the edge of my logo. So before I do that, let me just swap to a white foreground and just bring back my logo. So white makes everything, when I'm painting with white, it'll make everything come back. So, all right, so let's just clean up that. All right, so now, as I said, I wanted to take away little sections of my logo here so that it looks like it's grungy, okay? But I don't want it. I want it to sort of line up a bit better. So what you can do is if you right-click on the brush, you've got this little like a tool here that'll change the direction and the angle of the brush. So you can remember before it was horizontal. If I take this little lever here, I'm going to try and match this angle here. See that? So I'm just going to try and get it right here. So now my brush is the same angle as my artwork. And so now when I just click on that, so painting with black as my foreground color, see how I've got like more of a grungy edge? And I can also do this up on this side here. So right click and I'm going to bring my brush and change the angle this way. All right, and I'm just going to click on the edge here and do a little bit here as well. So again, I just want to have a little bit of a grungy sort of look. So we'll just try and match that angle here and just taking away a little bit. And I'm not going to go all the way in. I might even just try and take away a little bit more. Even on that side there. But you get the idea there. And so, and even you can change the opacity as well if you just want to fade, make it look a bit more faded there. Something like that. So now I think that's starting to look like it belongs. Definitely the lighting looks great and it starts to look faded and a bit grungy. So that's that one, and that's pretty straightforward. Now, let's place a logo under our ballerina so that it looks like you've got the school logo or the company logo on the floor of the shot. So again, I'm going to use the same logo. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and choose my logo. Here it is. Hit Place. Okay, so hit OK. And again, I've got it's now changed to a smart object. And I'm going to hit the Move tool, and I want to put this in perspective. Now, there is a way that you can do it using the 3D workspace, but I want to show you a really simple way to do this, and it's basically just by using existing lines in the image that you already have to show the perspective, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so if we have a look at this image here, we can see that we've already got have these existing lines in the concrete. So we've got here and here, and I can just make out here, and I can also use the edge of the building here and here and here. So I can use all of these lines to work out how to place my object in perspective. Now, as I say, there are workspaces that you can use in Photoshop that allow you to do this, but this is a basic tutorial, so I just want to show you a simple way to just place something in perspective when you've got a room like this and you've got these existing lines that you can use as a guide. So that's what I'm going to use as my guide. So if I turn my logo back on again, and I'm going to select the Move tool and come to Edit, Transform, Distort. Okay, now you can see that my guidelines are fairly wonky, but I think it'll help you see the lines that I'm following a little more clearly. But with the Move tool selected, all right, what I'm going to do is, and if you don't see the handles, just make sure that you've got the logo, you've clicked on that particular layer. Okay, now I'm going to match the guidelines that I've got. So just make sure that it's Edit, Transform, Distort. All right, and I'm now going to place the logo so that the little lines line up with the lines that are in the concrete. You could use the edges of a wall, but you get the idea that how I can make this logo looks like it's sitting on the ground in perspective. Okay, so I can line it up with these lines here, these lines back here, and also the concrete lines. Now I'm just going to turn these guys off and make sure that I'm still in the distort mode. So sometimes if you click on another layer or click on anything else, you're going to click out of distort mode. So if it's not working for you, just go back to Edit, Transform, and make sure that you've got distort selected. Okay, so I am just following these lines. All right, making sure that it's all sitting nicely. All right, and I'm going to place it over my ballerina like that. Now you can see at the moment it looks silly. Let's try changing the blend mode again to soft light, and you can see that's looking better, but there's a problem in that she is now covering up part of the logo. So I'm just going to move it around, but you can see by changing that blend mode to soft light, where there's highlights and the sunlight's sparkling there, it looks really good. So before I cut her out, remove her from this image, what I'm going to do is the same with the blending mode. So right click, blend mode, and I'm just going to start with the highlights here. So I'm holding down the Option on a Mac, Alt on a Windows, split my slider so that I can just soften it a little bit. All right, and we'll do the other side as well. You can see how that's now just blending into the floor a little bit better there, and you can see the texture of the concrete coming through. So the logo starting to look a bit more realistic, but we can see what's missing here is the fact that it's not looking quite right because I've got to cut the girl out of the shot. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I've got my bottom layer, my overlay layer selected. Okay, so it's this layer here. I'm going to add a layer mask, and now I can non-destructively, with black as my foreground color, come in, nice small brush. Now, the other way is you could actually choose the bottom layer and cut her out, but this is also a good way to do it. I'm just going to brush away the areas of her body and get rid of that logo that's poking through. So what I want to do is, rather than have 0 hardness, I'm going to make my brush maybe 50% hard so that I can match the edges a bit better. And I'm just coming in and just brushing, and what I can do so I can see a little bit easier is just drop the opacity and come in and just remove any of the logo that's showing through. All right. And just reducing my brush size. So anywhere that the logo is hitting her body, we don't want to see it, obviously, because it's supposed to be underneath her. I'm just removing that. And this is something that you'd want to take your time doing. So not as neat and tidy as I would like it, because I don't want to bore you with watching me do this, but you get the idea, and that's starting to look a lot better. So if I make a mistake and I take too much away, I just change my foreground color to white, and I can brush back in and change it to black if I want to remove any of that area. So that's pretty much cleaned up. That, and now the ballerina looks like she's, oh, there's a bit more on her back here, so we'll just clean that up here. All right, and so now the ballerina looks like that she's actually sitting on the logo on the ground. All right, so that's that, and you can also, if you wanted to, you could add a texture overlay to that image if you wanted to give it a bit more texture, but pretty much I think that works really well. You can see all the grunge of the texture on the concrete. This has been placed nicely in perspective, and this is just a really easy way to sort of, start doing this sort of thing for your clients. So let's try something a little bit trickier now. All right, so this basic technique not only works for the floor and the walls, but you might want to add a logo to a t-shirt. So I've got the class of 2021 on this guy's shirt here. I've got the logo on the wall, and I've also got the logo in the carpet, and it actually does look like it's in the carpet because the texture's coming through. And I've also added a texture overlay to the logo on the wall, so again it looks like it's been there for a long time. So this is something like you don't always get the opportunity to shoot at the school basketball court, or at the client doesn't always have their logo, so you could have put their logo on a wall, on lockers like I've done here, on carpet, on the floor of a arena. So this is something I'm sure that is a great way that you can value add to your clients. So let's have a look at how we do this image here. So I've got my clean plate now. First of all, we'll add the file to the back wall. So again, File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to search through my images. Here's my stock image that I'm going to place on the wall. All right, so again, I'm going to pick the Move tool, and I can now resize the handles. So just when I'm working in the latest updated version of Photoshop, I don't need to hold down the Shift key or anything. It's just, it'll resize up and down without holding any keys, and it'll also resize in perspective so it doesn't go all wonky. So I just want to have it at a size that it's going to fit in the locker. All right, so that looks good. All right, we're going to change the blend mode to, oops, we'll just turn that off. Now I'm going to change the blend mode, and as I mentioned in the ballerina image, it's a matter of choosing in this little section here of these blend modes which one looks best depending on what the underlaying layer is. So overlay and soft light doesn't really pop. Hard light looks great. So for this image, I think that hard light is the best. So that's the blend mode that I'm going to change it to. Okay, but now what I want to do is it kind of looks like it's stuck on there, but it doesn't really look authentic. I want it to look like it's in a grungy sort of locker room, and it's been there and been sweated on, and you know, all that sort of locker room stuff that goes on. So I want it to look old and a bit tattered. So first of all, I'm going to change the blending mode. So select the layer, right click, hit blending options, and again, I've got my two sliders that come up in the dialog box, and I'm going to hit the underlying layer, hit that little slider there with the Option key on a Mac, Alt on a Windows. All right, split the slider, so we're just softening it a little bit. All right, and then we'll do the underlying layer just so it blends in. So basically, it's being affected by the light that's in the shot, so it's looking a lot more realistic. So we're just blending it a bit more so that it looks like it actually belongs in the shot, and that's looking a lot better. So just a really tiny little adjustment there, and now it's on the background. It's got the texture of the locker now, and it's starting to look really good. The next thing I want to do is I want it to look old and textured, so I'm going to put a texture overlay, and so we're going to come down to File, Place Embedded, and the texture that I've chosen is, this is one of the textures that you'll get in the Gold Community Texture Pack. So if you just look in the Resources section, you'll be able to find this texture, or you might have one of your own. So this is like of ripped and peeling posters on a wall, and so I'm going to hit Place. Okay, and there's my texture, which is way too big for my image, so I'm just going to drag that down and sort of just move it around. All right, and then hit OK. And now I'm going to change my blend mode from normal. Make sure it's on top too of the image. Change my blend mode from normal to overlay. Looks good. And I'm going to reduce the opacity. And so basically we're just adding a little bit of grunge. Now you can see that I can still see the edge of my image. So I'm going to add a layer mask, and I'm going to hide that texture layer. So to do that, hit Command I. So now the layer mask is black, and I can no longer see my texture layer. To bring it back, all I need to do is select the brush tool, change my foreground color to white. And now anywhere that I brush with white is going to bring in some of that texture onto my image. And particularly I like how it looks in the whites on the edges. So basically I'm just grunging up this little logo a little bit. If I go too far, I change my foreground color to black. All right, now I'm just using the X key as a shortcut, and I'll just get rid of it there. I don't want it on the locker. Okay, now if you want, you can come back with a grunge brush and just do the edges like I did for the ballerina shot, but I think that looks pretty good, nice and grungy there. Okay, so now I'm going to place the logo on the carpet. So File, Place Embedded, open my image, there it is there, hit place. Okay, commit to that with the logo selected, edit, transform, distort. Okay, and now I can just move that image down a little bit, and I'm going to follow the layers, the lines that already exist in the shadows there. And this one I'm going to kind of use my eye to get the perspective right. All right, so just drop it down a little bit. All right, that looks pretty good there. Hit OK. All right, and now I'm going to change my blend mode. Let's have a look. Overlay, soft light, hard light. That looks too bright. I think soft light for this one. Okay, so let's have a look here, and you can see that the texture of the carpet is coming through there. All right, so there's the texture of the carpet. You can see that in the logo. So the logo actually looks like it's in the carpet, but let's make it look a bit better. Blending options and the underlying layer. Split the little slider, holding down the Option on a Mac, Alt on a Windows. Just move that across a little bit and do the shadows a little bit. You can see that's working really well. Once we go to the shadows, that's looking a lot more realistic, and hit OK. All right, so that looks pretty good, but what's missing is you can see that the carpet is now in some areas over the feet. So the same process as what we used for the ballerina project. I'm going to choose my carpet layer with the logo there. Add a layer mask, so it's this little icon here. Make sure that my foreground color is black. Choose a brush. I'm going to have about 50% hardness, and I'm just going to come in and clean up the shoes there. All right, and so just removing the carpet off the shoes and just over the areas where there shouldn't be a logo. All right, so that's that, and we'll do this little shoe here. And obviously you want to take a little bit of time doing this, and so that's sitting there nicely. All right, so that is looking really good. Finally, I want to add the logo or a logo to the t-shirt here. So I'm going to use the same approach. So File, Place Embedded, and I've actually created a little class of 2021, and we're going to place that on the t-shirt. So I'm just going to resize that, bring it over onto the t-shirt, line it up. All right, that looks pretty good right about there. And then I'm going to change my blend mode. Let's see, multiply, overlay. I prefer overlay, or let's try soft light. I think overlay is the go. That looks pretty good there. And see how it's just even using this simple technique, and there are more advanced techniques. I'll create some tutorials down the track, but already this has blended in beautifully, and just for something that you want to do quickly, this technique works really well. And what maybe this little bit, this congratulations down the bottom, is overkill. So what I'm going to do is create a layer mask, get my brush, black as my foreground color, and I'm just going to get rid of that because I don't like it. So we'll just keep the 2021. All right, and let's just change the blending options here. And again, I'm going to split that slider here and do the same with the blacks, the darks. You can see how that's now blending in and starting to look a lot more realistic given the lighting and everything that's going on. And there you go. So we've got the school logo in the background. We've put the school logo on the carpet, and we've even put a little class of 2021 on the Guernsey there. So you can see that there are so many different ways that you could use this technique for your senior portraits, for your advertising shots, as a way of value adding for your clients. Basically, the sky's the limit.